Okay, welcome back to Live Impact News. Let's get into it. Sports anchor Shane Fordham is here with us. The Washington Commanders made a huge addition earlier this week, signing Stefon Diggs to a one-year deal. $12 million, Shane, a one-year $12 million deal to fill ostensibly that number 2 receiver position, which was looked at as a major hole going into this training camp. Let's bring in Shane Fordham now. Shane, we get the news, and let's start with the fact of maybe why did this happen, and how do you see the fit going forward? What kind of a difference make is this?
Well, we knew one of the biggest question marks surrounding this Commanders offense all offseason was who is going to be the receiver 2. You know, the Commanders, they didn't sign Debo last year. They had a lot of injuries to the receiver position during the regular season last year. So one of the biggest question marks was who is going to be receiver 2 right behind Terry McLaurin. And we saw them answer this question in Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs and Brandon Ayuk were big names sort of circulating that question mark in terms of signing, and Keenan Allen possibly, in terms of names they could have brought in that could come in and immediately start for this offense, sort of more veteran guys who didn't have to do as much learning and maybe acclimating as these younger guys in the receiver room. So they answered the question with Stefon Diggs. And when you look at Stefon Diggs, this is honestly, I know we've talked about this off camera, but these are the type of moves that do lead to championships. Bringing in guys that are able to contribute to a team that really is in a position to compete now. We're not looking at the future when it comes to bringing in Stefon Diggs. This is a move for this season now, 2026.
A one-year deal speaks to that.
Exactly, yeah. One-year deal. And adding Stefon Diggs to this receiver room, you're bringing in winning experience to an inexperienced position group. You know, you look at everyone else in this room after Terry McLaurin and Stefon Diggs. None of these guys have ever been anywhere and really done much. You know, it's more so potential weapons as opposed to proven, and that's another conversation we've had. You look at Luke McCaffrey, a guy who showed flashes to be a potential deep threat. Jalen Lane, because of the work he's done on special teams last year, he showed potential to be a hopeful potential sort of Swiss Army knife sort of scat type of receiver, behind the line of scrimmage type of receiver, maybe a deep threat. Dyami Brown, he has 1 year in with Jaden Daniels, so you had potential there because of the chemistry. You had Antonio Williams obviously coming in as a rookie. Even though he's looked good during training camp, he's obviously unproven being a rookie. So you bring in Stefon Diggs, that is a proven weapon, something that the Commanders were in short supply of on the offensive end, aside from Terry McLaurin and maybe Chigo Okonkwo.
We knew there were questions about wide receiver 2 going into camp, right? And yet Stefon Diggs was not signed until after a week of camp. Right. Is this a situation where the Commanders were hoping, hey, let's start camp and let's see if one of these guys takes this wide receiver 2 job, and then they started camp and they just didn't see it from the young guys, and so they said, all right, we got to go get a veteran. It's clear that we don't have what we need on our roster right now because of what we've seen in week 1 here.
I think it could honestly be a mix of a few different things, including what you just said. The receiver 2 battle has been very competitive in training camp. They saw a lot of things they liked from Treylon Burks day 1 of camp. They saw a lot of things that they liked from Antonio Williams throughout camp, just in what he's able to do with the football in his hands. Obviously, they have time in with Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane. They have time in with Dyami Brown. So it was a competitive battle, but I also think it is the off-the-field stuff that Stefon Diggs had going on, the court case recently in the offseason, trying to see how that would play out. But then, of course, they were also heavily eyeing Brandon Ayuk, who is trying to sort of strong-arm his way out of San Francisco right now, but has a previous relationship with Jaden Daniels as they were former teammates at Arizona State. But, of course, you know, with the social media stuff that's been going on recently, he kind of sort of talked his way out of potential role on this offense. So Stefon Diggs recently became the clear option for the Commanders. You know, you could have maybe looked Keenan Allen's way, you know, maybe ignored the injury history and looking at maybe how good of a fit or a compliment he could have been to Terry McLaurin specifically in that receiver room. But Stefon Diggs just became the clearer and clearer option as they sort of progressed. He's a guy that he's coming in as really the best route runner in this receiver room, arguably, with Terry McLaurin. I think his hands are on caliber with Terry McLaurin. He might be slightly better after the catch than Terry McLaurin, but he is by far a receiver 1 on really almost any other team that doesn't already have an elite receiver in that position. You know, so the fact that the Commanders can shore up a receiver duo made up of 2 receiver 1s, there are very few offenses in the NFL that have 2 true receiver 1s right now, which does give this Commanders offense a leg up going into the season.
Now, you mentioned where you feel Stefon Diggs falls in the NFL now, which is that he can be a wide receiver one. And we saw that he was a wide receiver one for a team that went to the Super Bowl last year. Granted,
Right.
a team whose offense did disappear in the postseason by and large.
Right.
Here is Stefon Diggs' recent history here. He had 4 years in Buffalo where his career really and truly peaked. For about 3 years there, he was one of the very best receivers in the NFL. In his 4 years in Buffalo, 4 Pro Bowls, 2 seasons over 1,400 yards receiving, 2 seasons with double-digit touchdowns, and the Bills were one of the favorites in the league to win the Super Bowl each and every year. His last year in Buffalo, his lowest receiving yards since he got to the Bills, 1,183. And he had 160 targets, 1,183 yards. Then he goes to the Texans at the age of 31.
Yeah.
8 games, 496 yards, tears his ACL. Back to the Patriots last year, a healthy year, 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that would be on the lower end of what you would hope a wide receiver one in a dominant offense would have numbers-wise, right? It's also been now 3 years since he put up his peak numbers. He is 32 years old as it stands right now, and yet you have a lot of confidence in the fact that he can still be a game-changing playmaker in the league.
Yeah.
When you hear all of those different things that may be stacked up against him, why do you feel as though he's someone who can still perform at a truly elite playmaking, changing the game, tilting the field level?
See, for me, when we talk Stefon Diggs, we also have to talk track record. This guy has an immediate impact on every team that he has been a part of. You look at him going to the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills before Stefon Diggs were a wild card team at the most. Josh Allen, who, according to many, is arguably the best quarterback in the league right now, was a 3,000 yard passer consistently at best. With Stefon Diggs, the Bills are now, like you said, a consistent contender. They are a consistent threat for the AFC title game, 1 game away from the Super Bowl. And Josh Allen goes from being a 3,000-yard passer to a consistent 4,000-yard passer, really solidifying, cementing his name into that elite conversation. You look at the Patriots. Obviously, the Patriots before Stefon Diggs were in a playoff drought. They hadn't made the playoffs since before Tom Brady left to retire and then return to go to the Bucs. With Stefon Diggs, 1 year with Stefon Diggs, they go from being one of the worst teams in the NFL to being statistically the best team in the AFC, going to a Super Bowl. Drake May goes from being a rookie that was still trying to get his feet wet, was kind of struggling to find a flow with this offense that lacked a true receiver one. He goes from being that guy to now being not an MVP candidate, an MVP finalist, an MVP runner-up, and a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. So when we can talk stats, the stats are obviously there, being that 7 out of the past 8 seasons, he's broken that 1,000-yard mark. But you also have to talk track record. That's why I said this is a championship-level move for the Commanders, because he is coming in as a guy that has a history of making an immediate impact, an immediate positive impact for teams that he has been on.
I'm going to play the other side just for fun here,
Okay.
since we're hanging. Okay. We talk about the impact he had on the Patriots. It was also the first year with Mike Vrabel as head coach of the New England Patriots.
That was a big part, of
certainly
course.
makes a
Yeah,
big
for sure.
difference. Last year, the New England Patriots 4th in points against. The previous season, 22nd in points against. So that defense improved quite a bit. And as has been much discussed, the Patriots played against one of the easier schedules we've seen in the NFL in a long time. So there are some other factors to bring in when it comes to who made a difference for New England last year. But no question, over 1,000 yards, Stefon Diggs certainly was a factor.
And that was 1 year removed from an ACL tear.
And with all of that said, I find it puzzling that New England did not bring him back. I know they brought in A.J. Brown, but like you said, he can be a great wide receiver too. I find that puzzling, but what we do know is that Stefon Diggs is a very hard worker. He is someone who consistently shows up ready to go and in shape from a physical standpoint. And like you said, does have a track record of when he gets to a place, the quarterbacks perform better. So I'm interested to see what develops here with Jaden Daniels.
And you know, if I'm the Patriots, a franchise that is not historically used to dealing with strong personalities when it comes to offensive skill players, other than Brady.
Is that true?
Other
They
than
had
Brady,
Randy Moss on that team.
But when I talk strong personalities,
Yeah,
Randy
Rob
was never
Gronkowski on that team. He's got a big
strong in
personality.
a different way. Strong in a different way. We've seen AJ sort of be a problem in the locker room. We've seen there are reports that Stefon Diggs has been a problem in the locker room before. If I'm the Patriots, I don't blame I don't blame that franchise for not wanting those two at the same time in the same locker room. You know, even though they both have moments where they are strong leaders, they also have
to compete.
They do.
I think that would be those guys love to compete, and that's what you want. A lot of their problems are from the frustration with the team.
They do.
Not
but
being
if
better, or at least from reports that we've
right.
seen. Yeah.
But if you're in the mindset where you only want to go with one of those guys because you feel like you have the supporting cast that really just needs that cherry on top or icing on the cake that would be A.J. Brown or Stefon Diggs, I think anyone would likely go with A.J. Brown in that conversation just because A.J. really talent-wise is a top 3 receiver in the NFL. And if you have a chance to get A.J., you know, and clearly they knew things, you know, behind the scenes that we as the media didn't know at the time. If you have a chance to get A.J., you're going to save that money to put towards your new receiver one that you could say has a higher ceiling than, like you said, a 32-year-old Stefon Diggs, as opposed to spending money on Diggs as well. So it does make sense when you consider the bigger picture and where, you know, what the Patriots are kind of working on behind the scenes.
Okay.
At least to me.
Listen, you want to make sure that quarterback, Jaden Daniels, has everything he needs to succeed. Stefon Diggs certainly elevates the talent level on that offense. We'll see if he can continue to produce and fit in as a part of that team. And like we said, be the number 2 behind Terry McLaurin, truly the leader of that team, who is going to, you would think, demand, you know, the largest share of the targets and things like that. But for now, the wide receiver 2 position appears to be solved, and so the Commanders can move forward. You know, training camp, a series of problem solving. This problem looks solved pending health, and so you could have a more explosive offense than maybe we thought going into August.
And, you know, Connor, I honestly think, you know, kind of speaking about A.J. Brown, I really do believe that this acquisition of Stefon Diggs is maybe the second most important acquisition in the offseason out of any team in the NFL.
Oh man,
I think AJ.
The Los Angeles Rams traded for Myles Garrett.
I think it's top 3. You have AJ at 1.
So you're gonna put Myles at 2?
No.
I'm putting player in the NFL went to a team that was the second best in the league last year.
1,000%.
That is the most important move.
I respectfully disagree.
Myles Garrett is the most important move of the offseason. The Los Angeles Rams were the second best team in the league last year, and they just added the best defensive player of the last 5 years to their squad. And his presence may bring Aaron Donald back. That team's trying to go win a Super Bowl. The Commanders are trying to get back on track. What happened in L.A., that's the move of the offseason.
But we're forgetting the Commanders, when they were healthy, were knocking on that door just like the Rams were last year. So if I'm looking at the most important...
2 years ago, the Commanders made a surprise run to the NFC Championship game. I think if you go game for game, blow for blow, the Rams last year were on a different level than 2 years ago.
But think about that. You said a surprise run. They're a better team now on paper than they were 2 years ago in 2024 with pretty much the same system and the same core, Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn. So if I'm looking
core is far more than just 2 players. They did lose Bobby Wagner. They're revamping that defensive line.
Bobby Wagner was I believe in his nearing mid-30s,
playing at an all-pro
level. But he was not the best player on that defense that year.
Playing at an all-pro level for long stretches. And
so was Frankie Louvu, and Frankie Louvu's still there.
You're talking about most important signings of the offseason. Let's not forget Dontavian Wicks to the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, let's not bury the lead here. And unfortunately, and I'm not even doing this just because we're getting spicy here. I'm doing this because we actually have just about run out of time. Last word from Shane Fordham.
I think the Stefon Diggs acquisition is one of the more important acquisitions of the NFL offseason in terms of being more conducive to winning. You know, we were kind of talking about this off camera. I think elite receiver play in today's NFL is more conducive to winning than elite edge play, even though Myles Garrett can single-handedly game wreck, disrupt an offense. But I think in today's NFL, passing offense, I think this is the bigger.
He brought me all the way to the end so that I couldn't get a word in. As he's learned what we're doing around here. That does it for Live Impact News for the day and the week. We hope to see everybody next week. Thanks for being with us.